completely upfront about the fact I can't prove that to myself or anybody else, and I'm latching onto it only because, absent that belief, everything seems kind of pointless, and that doesn't sound like a good way to live. But even on that one, I would love to be proved wrong. I'd love to be shown a way to determine whether everything is just an illusion, and I'd certainly be the first to amend my my view of reality if it was proved to me that everything was an illusion. You know, but it's what Matt was saying. The goal in life should be to find out what's actually true, and go with that.
Are you there?
I guess I lost him.
We talked Brett right off the air. Sorry, Brett. You got the two biggest talkers, so I'm sorry we kind of went overboard on that. Anyway, it's 5:30 here in Austin, Texas, August 29, 2010. We're still taking calls. We're going to take live calls right up till the end of the show. And you can join us for dinner at around 6:30 or so at Threadgill's at 301 West Riverside. There are at least, lines are full again. So did you have anything to add? Or
I don't. Let's move on. Yeah.
We've got Lupo in Akron.
Hello, yes.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you guys?
Pretty good.
Yeah, I just want to quickly talk about hell, since that seems to be the big topic now, isn't it?
If you like, go ahead.
Are
you for or against?
I don't know if a lot of people realize this, but hell has been found, but not in the matter of what a lot of people think. Hell was a garbage dump in ancient Jerusalem outside the city where they would burn garbage, and that's where the lepers lived. And
actually,
lepers
I don't
were
think
known to be the biggest sinners.
That
therefore,
one of several words in the Bible that have been translated as hell does map to what you're talking about. I'm not going to go into it in great detail because I'm not, in a particular mood for that today. But it's an oversimplification to do this. Hell has been found and it's this dump. No, that's not the case.
Sorry, Lupo.
You can actually go watch my Visions of Hell lecture online, which includes pictures of hell and actually talks about the different Bible words that are translated as hell, whether it's Hades or Gehenna, etc., and it covers that. Go ahead.
And yes, it seems like other people are talking about morality too. So do you believe that humans are either inherently good or bad?
No. They're inherently human.
So there is no inherent morality?
Correct.
Okay.
I like the questions I can answer easily.
Do you think there is? Are we disagreeing with you on something that you feel very strongly about? If so, say so.
No, you're not. You're actually pretty much agreeing with me in every point. And
sorry,
which makes for really boring television. But keep going.
And I have one last question. That is, I have been back watching a lot of episodes of the show and a lot of different calls and everything, and I have been listening to where you come from with your atheism and everything, and I don't know if you could expand on that for me or something.
I'm not quite sure what you're asking.
Yeah, on what in particular?
I guess a better explanation of why you're atheist.
Because we want to believe as many true things and as few false things as we can, and as far as we can tell, the proposition that there is a God is not sufficiently demonstrated to justify belief.
Okay, and how are you defining God in this point?
What I just said will apply to most of the major definitions of what a god is. Obviously, though, if somebody, like an example I like to use is if I'm on a South Seas island and they've got a totem pole and that they worship and they say that's their god, well, I can go rap on that thing with my knuckles and know that it exists. But that's not what most people mean. We're talking about the Christian God, the Jewish God, Allah, those kinds of gods.
I mean, generally, I don't make any kind of claim that way at all. I don't define a God. If I'm having a conversation with somebody who says they believe in a God, I want them to tell me what it is that they believe in, and then I'll let them know whether or not I believe in it and why. Because there are people, but I agree with Jeff. There are definitions of God, or there are usages of God that are not only more common but more valuable. In order for us to communicate effectively, I'd like us to have kind of an economy of language, and it would be very nice if we could not conflate terms, which is why the word spiritual just drives me bonkers, because it's absolutely meaningless. It means a million different things to a million different people, and it's usually used as an excuse for conveying meaning rather than as an intent to convey meaning. And God is often the same way, but I would say that God as a label typically conveys along with it some baggage, so that if somebody says this totem pole is God, or this coffee cup is God, okay, clearly we're talking about an existing object, but this coffee cup, which doesn't have coffee in it, it's water, has a name already. It's like when people say the universe is God, or God is love. Well, no, the universe already has a label, it's universe, and love already has a label, it's love. So you are clearly trying to add something to it with this God label, but you're not explaining what it is that you're adding to it. And until you do, I'm fine with saying, okay, I accept that, the universe exists, but I don't accept your additional baggage that you're trying to tie onto it with the God label.
Right. Like with the South Seas Islanders, I might have to, I would happily agree that their God exists, but if they then tell me that it controls the weather, I may well disagree with them on that point. Okay?
Yes, and I love philosophy. I'm a big philosophy student, even though I'm only in high school, but I've taken philosophy classes and I've studied it a lot on my own and everything. And I have a book open here by, it's The Story of Philosophy by Will Durant, and I'm going to quote this here. And it says, "For nothing is so difficult as definition, nor anything so severe a test and exercise of mental clarity and skill."
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's right, but I like it. Definition is. I think there may be some things that are more difficult, but I'm not going to get pedantic and pick at somebody else's quote. But thanks, Lupo.
Yep. Thank you, guys.
We've got Andy here in Austin. How are you?
All right. How are you guys?
Pretty good.
Good, Andy.
Good. I got a couple things to discuss with you, and actually a theist-atheist joke for you, since humor was one of the earlier subjects.
Uh-huh.
But, so anyway, one of them is just my general frustration with theist arguments, that they seem to fall into two different categories. One is, and I heard a couple on this show, is, the Bible is true, and I can take out the Bible and read you the verse that shows you it's true.
Yeah.
It's kind of like, well, I want someone to tell me that so I can say, well, we're flying all over the galaxy fighting aliens, and I'm going to put in this Star Trek DVD and show you that it's true. And it's a DVD and you're watching it, it must be true. So that's a frustration I have with that, and I think it's just kind of an uneducated kind of way of saying that I'm a theist and this is why it's true. And people are in church and other places, told to do that and told to believe, and this is why.
Yeah, there's dependence on authority.
Yeah, exactly. So the second one is that there seems to be a great reliance for the more educated theists on the structure of argument. And I understand the reasons that we really need to have a good structured argument. You need to be able to look at the logical inconsistencies, and if someone throws out a syllogism, you need to say, well, that's not a syllogism because of this and this and this. But it's really like watching paint dry. I mean, it's just, and I understand for you guys it must be absolutely hideous too, but it's very frustrating because it seems like they're moving away from the actual point of the argument of I can prove God exists to the structure of the argument being perfect. And it seems to just escape why we're even talking about it.
Okay. I'll admit to being slightly tired and groggy today, but I have no problem arguing at either level, both conversationally or with syllogisms. And to me, they're not like paint dry, but I'm a bit of kind of a logic / philosophy masochist in that I'm the guy who had Matt Slick on for 45 minutes doing tag, which for most people, they'd rather scrape out their eyeballs with a spoon.
Yes, and that's one of the ones I watched, that it seemed to fall deeply into the structure of the argument and kind of get away from why we're talking about this, and it was a little frustrating. Just, I think, for the general viewer, it's a little frustrating.
I have reminded theists that tried to come at me with, great big, plotted out logical argument that, hey, you are the guys who are claiming that this is the message from your invisible friend for everybody on the planet who's supposed to be able to just get it, and you're already on shaky ground if you need to resort to this kind of thing to make your point.
Yeah, it's like resorting to magic.
It's one of the points that I bring up in the secular morality lecture, is that some things just don't pass the sniff test. We don't need to spend a lot of time on analyzing syllogistic structure or anything else, because if at the end of the day, let's say some theist, which many people are convinced that Alvin Plantinga's done this with his modal logic argument version of the ontological argument, have produced a foolproof argument that demonstrates that a God must exist. It's still utterly unconvincing because, first of all, almost nobody can actually understand his argument.
Right.
And second of all, there's not actual evidence supporting it. Even the people who do understand the argument don't understand the flaws with, or the potential flaws of what he's trying to say. At the end of the day, you could present to me an argument that I could not refute because I simply either don't understand it, don't have the expertise, or am unable to spot the flaw in it. But it won't convince me on its own, because until there's evidence to support that, unless I have been completely convinced that the premises are true and the form is valid, I'm unlikely to accept the conclusion. I'm more likely to say, I don't know what's wrong with it, but until you can present evidence, I still suspect that there's something wrong with it.
Right. And I think my point is that if it really all is based on faith, then why do you have to go into a huge logical argument? Not on your part.
That is another darn good point.
It's like trickery to them to go into a logical argument.
Not only that, but if this is as many Christians would posit, not just a matter of faith, but obvious and supported by evidence, why would they ever try to construct an argument like this?
Yeah, on the one hand, we have the theists who say, well, go outside and look at the trees, and that's your proof that there's a God.
Yeah.
And on the other end of the spectrum, we have these guys.
Yeah. So, okay, I don't want to go on for a long time because I know I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, so to say. But anyway, the other thing is that as growing up, we went to church every Sunday, and I'm an atheist from the get-go. I didn't believe it from the day I went. And I didn't really understand what being an atheist was. I thought you had to make a decision that there's a God, like these people did, or there's no God. And I wasn't, emotionally ready to make that decision, wasn't intellectually ready to make that decision, and I didn't understand I didn't need to make that decision, that it was okay to say, I don't believe it. So I really appreciate you guys and the show. I've been watching for about a year to get that finally. That it's okay to say, I don't believe it, and I've read the book, I've seen the movie, I don't believe it.
I read the book, saw the movie, got the T-shirt, went to the pre-release parties, and don't believe it.
Yeah. So anyway, I know you got other callers waiting, but I'll give you the atheist joke. So for some reason, a theist and an atheist are walking along together, and they get kidnapped. And their kidnappers tell them, we're going to kill you, but you get one final wish. And the theist is an apologist, and he says, I have this wonderful speech that proves the existence of God, and I want to give it one more time before I die. And they look over at the atheist, and he says, I'd like for you to shoot me before he gives that speech.
Oh, that's awesome.
You can recycle that one.
I will. That is too good. All right, thanks, Andy.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Appreciate it. We've got Ryan in St. Louis. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Not too bad.
I just wanted to talk about when you guys before were saying that the idea of what's the harm is kind of irrelevant, whereas we should be concentrating on is it true? Mm-hmm. And I kind of, maybe I'm missing something, but I kind of see it the other way around, that truth has no inherent value to it. It only is helpful if it reduces harm.